Welcome to Lift Your Legacy. My name is Jacob Rupp, father, husband, and rabbi. And each week we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unlock your inner potential and create change that will impact the future. Thank you for listening, and let's get to it. This is Lift Your Legacy, episode number 7. Today I am thrilled to bring you Rabbi Shlomo Seidenfeld, who is a rabbi and in real estate in Los Angeles, California, an unbelievable speaker and media personality. Rabbi Seidenfeld is dealing with some very difficult topics tonight, which are of great importance to us, such as how do you maintain your passion and your emotional connection to Judaism, to your spiritual life? How do you inspire your children to want to be as involved or more involved than you are and to have a tremendous sense of Jewish pride? And why the phrase, "don't judge Judaism by the Jews," is actually inaccurate. With no further ado, Rabbi Shlomo Seidenfeld. Rabbi Seidenfeld, good evening.
Good evening, Jacob.
Hey, tell me a little bit about your path to outreach.
I had spent many years studying in yeshiva, which in and of itself was a bit of I took a detour to get there. I thought when I was in high school that I was going to law school, eventually going to go to law school. And then I became intoxicated with Jewish learning. That's the best adjective that I could use. So I spent many years in yeshiva, and then it came time for me to leave. I kind of felt like I wanted to explore and use my talents out there in the world. I wasn't exactly sure what the venue was going to be, and I ended up falling into, luckily, campus outreach through Hillel in New York at Brooklyn College.
Wow.
So I was the program director there for 4 years and was the acting director there for 1 year. And that really started me down this path. I wasn't sure exactly, where I was going to end up. But that experience laid the foundation for everything that came afterwards.
Tell me what you get specifically out of outreach and how you have figured out how to do both the balancing of working in a profession, but staying with that core passion of being involved in Jewish education.
Well, for me, when I decided after I had been in outreach or, a professional Jew, for many years. When I went into business, there was such a huge void in my life. And I knew teaching had to be, had to continue to be part of my life. So I continued just to do things on my own, my own time. And yes.
Keep going.
Oh, okay, fine. Started giving classes in my home. I was, and still am very close to a rabbi who has an outreach center in the old city of Yerushalayim, Rabbi David Aaron of Israelite. My wife actually became observant through that program.
Wow.
Back in the 80s, and I taught for them. So I just started giving Israelite classes here in Los Angeles, and then it just sort of like took on a life of its own.
I'm sorry to interrupt. If I can dig in a little bit more, tell me about what that void felt like, and if you think that's typical of someone working in the world, or if it's just something that, having experienced being involved with what you were, like that's kind of, you were not used to the shift in pace.
That's a good question. Teaching for me was just an extension of the passion that I have for people and the excitement that I get from learning itself. The best analogy that I came up with when I wrote an article for the Jewish Journal here in Los Angeles was someone who is a archaeologist. Just imagine the excitement of being on an archaeological dig. And there is this massive site that you are painstakingly brushing away. And what you're exposing and unearthing are years and years and years. the excitement incredibly builds. I've never been on a site, but I can only imagine. So that's what it is for me when I study. And I want to, and I want people to experience that themselves. So that, it was something that fills me up personally to learn and to teach. And it's something that I wanted to bring to others.
Do you find that people not connecting to Judaism is a profound problem? Or are you seeing that people just don't know enough? Like, what do you feel like when you're looking at the Jewish world, having been involved for such a long time? What do you feel like is the primary issue that you're driving to solve? And how do you go about solving it?
I think I don't know if there's one primary issue. I think that there are multiple perceptions out there that sort of sabotage people or dissuade people from maybe considering or seeking. Sometimes they look other places. In the 60s, per capita or percentage wise, there were more Jews that were investigating Far Eastern religions than any other faith. So we have this we have this ravenous appetite for spirituality. But sometimes we just don't, we have a perception of what it is in our own backyard and we don't pursue it. That coupled with the fact, and I'm not even sure that's as much of a problem as it used to be. I think more of a problem is that a lot of people have this perception that Judaism, halacha, Jewish life is oppressive or can be oppressive. Is it even necessary? Isn't it enough to be a good person? It's a question, one of the questions that Telushkin and Prager tackled in their classic, The 9 Questions. It's still a question, still huge. It's still, I think, a huge influence. Why take on a lifestyle, that promises to produce something when you feel that you can produce it without the lifestyle?
Well, that's a good question. What do you say? That
is a huge question. So you want to know what my answer to that question is?
I'll take your answer to that question.
Well, okay, come to my next class.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you how I approach it. And first of all, let me just say this, that before I respond to anybody, I try as much as is possible, and sometimes I just don't have the time for this, to understand exactly where this person is coming from. Because, and not to just to pay attention to what that person, he or she, is saying, but maybe what they're not saying, but that's really at the core of what they're, what is dissuading them. So my answer to them starts this way. Okay, it starts this way. I ask them what they do professionally. They tell me what they do. There's an architect, an attorney, an accountant. It makes no difference. An actor. I once had an actor in my sukkah, and he was an aspiring actor. No. This was in his apartment. I gave a Torah class in this actor's apartment. And I turned to him. He was sitting right next to me. And there were a bunch of millennials over there. And I asked him in front of the class, I said, do you want to be a good actor? And he's aspiring. He's not there yet. I said, you want to be a good actor? I asked him. He said, you bet. I said, no, you don't. He said, what do you mean? He said, you don't want to be a good actor. You want to be a great actor. And he smiled and he acknowledged that really, when you have a passion for something, good isn't good enough. You want to be great at something. The question is, how do you become great at something? So you can be a good person. What I tell people is you can be clearly Jew, non-Jew, whatever. You can be a good person without the Torah. The question is, can you be the greatest person possible without the Torah? Is the Torah a vehicle, potentially a vehicle for you to develop and evolve into the best, most courageous, most clear, compassionate person, energetic person you can be?
How do you address, if you'd have a person that has already made a commitment, or many of the people that have made commitments to Judaism and are raising their family and kind of in that, it's clearly part of their identity,
right? But
they're not feeling that.
Yeah.
And they're feeling like it's just like anything else. Some people get up and take their kids to school. This guy gets up and davens. And then, so how do you talk to a person who's in that situation, who's, quote, doing all the things, the steps to the greatest person he can be, but he feels largely stagnant?
Yeah. By the way, and that I don't know. I don't have any hard statistics, but there are a lot of people in that camp. There are a lot of people in that camp who've been observant their entire lives. And there's a growing number of people in that camp that became observant, but then over the course of time became a little bit more, I don't want to say disillusioned, but felt like their Judaism became mechanical.
Mechanical, or just that when a person becomes observant, a lot of people, and again, I don't know the statistics of it, but I'm sure a large percentage of people are in the formative years of their life, and have that mentorship when they're younger, but don't have that same mentorship once the call them challenges, call it life, as you get older, and with the kids and with the struggling to put the bread on the table and marriage and everything like that. So could it just be that they don't have this? So how do you deal with that?
Right. Well, listen, what I say often is that there are a lot of Jews that are going through the motions, but very few that are going through the emotions and feeling things as deeply as they want to. I think it's wonderful. I think it's great when someone feels that troubled by the fact that they're not feeling more. That's a madrega. That's a level to be bothered by that. There are a lot of people that are not even bothered by that. They're just happy, they're comfortable. And again, I'm not casting aspersions at all. I'm not trying to making a value judgment at all, but there are plenty of people who have what they have. They're comfortable with what they have. It satisfies them on some level. It infuses their life with meaning. There's some people who want more, who want to feel more. They want to feel more when they daven, when they pray. They want to feel more in their relationship. They just want to be much more inspired. And for those people, I'll tell you what it is for me. And I just believe, I believe that the study of Torah in the right hands, with the right people, with the right books, can inspire you and can fuel that inspiration. If you're dynamically involved in studying that which you are doing, you have a much better chance of that exciting you.
Tell me a little bit about how you were able to do that in your own life.
That's the big question. I have to tell you. I mean, I grew up in a modern Orthodox home. So I was one of those people that always had a yarmulke on my head, always kept kosher, always Shabbos, all that stuff. And it wasn't until my junior year in high school that I went to yeshiva. Thank God. It was just a quirk of fate that my parents moved and there was no Jewish school. There was no day school where I was. So they sent me away to the nearest yeshiva in Memphis, Tennessee, of all places.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and by the way, Elvis isn't the king. We know who the king is, right? We know who the king. So, and that was my first taste of Torah. And all I can tell you is, and it didn't happen immediately because I don't think I took it seriously, but maybe halfway through my junior year, or towards the end of my junior year, I just started to feel like there was a depth here that I had never experienced. Not a depth outside myself, a depth inside myself that I was discovering. It was bringing out something that, I'll share with you, if you don't mind. May I share a Torah with you? That I use quite a bit because I think it's very powerful and it speaks to this point. So we're all familiar with that teaching that we're taught the entire Torah. Malachim, angels teach us the entire Torah in utero while we're in our mother before we're born, and then of course we're born. The angel touches us and we forget everything. Okay, we know that Torah. So what's powerful about that is, or the implication of that is this, that we have everything inside us already. We forgot it, right? It's there. So chinuch, Jewish education, isn't about putting something in. It's about pulling something out. That's what it's about. All of our learning, all of our experiences are triggering wisdom that's implanted in us, that was implanted in us before we were born. And it's all about pulling that out. We have everything we need inside of us. And in fact, Rabbi Aaron said something very interesting. Rabbi David Aaron from Israelite, he noted that you see this in the English word for chinuch, education, because the shorish, the root of the word education is idus, which means to pull out. So we've got everything. We have everything we need inside of us, but it has to be pulled out. And to your point, you have to want to pull it out. So somebody who is feeling troubled by the fact that they're not feeling more, they're in a pretty good place, but now what do you do? Right? Now what do you do? What do you do? How do you manufacture that?
Right.
So I think Jewish learning is a huge part of it. And it really is a big part of it.
Do you have a prescription for what to learn, or do you feel that any kind of learning is good? Obviously, everyone according to their level, but let's say I'm looking at, I mean, for me, let's use for me. I have the gamut in front of me. What do you think for a person that is looking to be more connected? What is a person supposed to learn? Is it Gemara? Is it Halacha?
Well, again, that really depends on the person. I would say this: it's almost not a question of what; it's a question of how. And learning is exciting to me not because of the subject matter. People ask me all the time, "What do you enjoy teaching? What do I enjoy teaching?" And there's some things maybe I enjoy more than others. But bottom line is, whatever it is. It's something that is, it's a process, it's an experience that is exhilarating to me. And because it's very, not analytical in an intellectual way, but there's an excitement that I really feel when I'm sitting and learning, that as I'm analyzing and questioning and probing, it's the key to this higher consciousness or a higher level or a deeper level. So when I'm teaching, I involve my students that way as well. It's a very interactive experience as opposed to passive experience. We're questioning and mulling things over and really being involved dynamically. So what you learn is not as important almost as how you learn, how you approach it, by asking questions and probing and trying to come up with creative, not only studying the classic commentaries, but seeing what you can come up with yourself. But what I love, my passion, probably more than anything else, is Chumash. But I study Chumash like I study Talmud, with the same dissection, the same process.
Okay, I know this might sound quaint or immature, but do you find yourself identifying with one particular personality in the Chumash?
Do I find myself identifying with one particular personality? No, I can't say I identify with one, because they're all indispensable personalities. Each one, we had 3 Avos, we had 4 Imos, we had Moshe, we had Aaron, we had Pinchas, we had Nachshon, we had Yehoshua. You had, and each person, I'll tell you this, I'll pick out a section, a particular section. That is my favorite section to teach. And it's only because it's so problematic. And I have a sweet tooth for that which is problematic, because I kind of feel whatever is problematic is on the minds of everybody, and contained within that are some secrets to dealing just with problematic issues in general, and that's the Akedah. The Akedah is probably the episode.
The binding of Isaac. The
binding, the command to sacrifice Isaac.
Right.
That, along with Yaakov wrestling with the angel, those are the two. I definitely identify with that. Do you think that there's a key point there that's like consistently relevant? Like when you're teaching that story, what message are you trying to impart? The Akedah story?
Yeah.
If I have to reduce it down to one salient message,
yeah.
If I let me give that a moment's thought. I don't have more than that. I would say that the power of one moment to transform yourself. Now, but this is part of a much bigger teaching. But the power of one moment. Can I show you this teaching? Because I've got to do it at this point.
Do it.
Because otherwise, what I just said.
I'm fired up. Let's do it.
Okay. There is. So here we have Avram, who's about to do the unthinkable. I mean, it's just the unthinkable. And he has his knife in his hand. His hand is raised up. He's about to do it. And then a voice comes out. Said, Avram, don't do anything. The way I teach it is, Avram, step away from your son and put the knife down. So he does. And then the words, because now I know that you would not withhold your only son from me. What's the big question there? What, God didn't know that before? I'm sorry, I jumped in before you. I do this all the time.
I was gonna go for that one. Good.
Yeah, was that what you were going to say?
I was going to say that.
Okay, so what God didn't know. Okay, so if you had the text in front of you, you'd see that it actually wasn't Hashem. It wasn't God, it was a malach. Good, so God's off the hook. Now we have a different problem. What's the malach doing there? What do I have to prove anything to a malach? So there's a teaching that talks about the malachim trying to dissuade God from creating man. Dissuade God from creating man. And the reasoning is simple. Just open up any paper and look at the entire first section of the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, any paper. It's filled with all of the violence and just horrific stories of man's inhumanity towards man and all this stuff. And he said, don't do it. You're wasting. Don't create them. Don't give them the Torah. Don't do it. So now you fast forward. And now it's the malach that's there. And now the malach is answering, now I know. Wow. Now I know. In that one moment, Avram justified and validated the creation of humanity.
That's awesome.
In that moment.
How do you take that concept and that fire and ensure that your children pick that up? Because one of the major issues, and I think it's across the board, but a lot of parents struggle, both observant and not observant. And, how do you, and it's on the minds literally of every single Jewish institution, this whole major gap that exists between the older generation that is, dying off, but knew why they were Jewish and had contributed to Jewish causes. And there's very few people stepping up to fill the plates. And this idea of Jewish continuity, you have this very powerful message, but how do you bring that to your own children or to the collective, your children, if we look at ourselves as one people?
You know what? I think when it comes to children, I have 3 daughters, Kenai, Nora, thank God. And I want you to know no one walking the planet is impervious to what you just described. I remember hearing Rabbi Frand from Ner Yisrael speak at Yavne in Los Angeles. My wife insisted that I go. I'm very difficult to satisfy, so I don't go to a lot of speakers. He said, "You're going. It's on parenting. You're going."
Speaking connoisseur, right? I hear.
Yeah, exactly. And this is how he opened. Now, this is a person who's clearly, he's a Rosh Yeshiva of a major Torah institution, Ner Yisrael in Baltimore, right? His kids grew up in somewhat of a yeshiva bubble, right? He opened up by saying the following, and this was, I want to say 8 to 10 years ago. He said, I am grateful that I don't have to raise my kids in today's world. The world of the internet, the world of the iPhone, the world of, or at least the easy access to things. And what I loved about that was here was a Rosh Yeshiva that himself was acknowledging the challenge that this poses to anybody, including himself. He was putting himself in that category. He's grateful that he didn't have to deal with that. So so I have to tell you, I'm speaking now as a parent now, a parent who's also a teacher, who's a rabbi, whatever, who's been around the block, I guess. But, and the thing about kids, the other thing about kids is that quite often they have to go outside their parents in order to hear truth, because we don't necessarily have the credibility that an outside person has.
Of course.
They'll hear the same thing, maybe spoken a little bit differently from another person, and all of a sudden that has credibility.
I've been telling you that forever.
I know. I just had an amazing example of that with me and my father, actually, who
really
just turned 87 and is living in Yerushalayim. But
wow.
I've been telling him something for years. He didn't listen to me. Somebody else tells him it. Shlomo, you wouldn't believe it. To me, I believe the greatest chinuch that we can impart is imparted through modeling a behavior, an integrity, a passion, an honesty, a compassion to others. That is absolutely essential. And I have to tell you, and I actually talk about this quite a lot, because it's a huge topic of conversation. How do our schools produce the type of not kids, adults that we want, that not only that are Jewish, but that are not judgmental and passionate and compassionate. So it's all about, and I think for a lot of them, a lot of kids nowadays, right? They have to be impressed with the product. Mm. If they're not impressed with the product, they're going to find another product.
Yeah.
So, and we're the first line. And then the teachers and their teachers are definitely the next line of defense. And then other Orthodox Jews or other traditional Jews, the next line of defense. And if we're not behaving in a manner that exemplifies everything that we attribute to Torah Judaism, they're going to smell a rat.
Yeah, it's crazy. I hear very often, in my work with high school students and college students, I hear all the time. It's always like they pick a person that they use as kind of the paradigm, and it's very rarely an idea. They're never really bothered by, well, this doesn't make sense, but it's right. Oh, but so and so's a bad person, and he's like that.
But and that's a little bit unfair.
I never thought about it like that. That's amazing.
Right. It's a little unfair, and it's a little bit lazy just to choose one person and to use that person as a validation for you not going off. But I have to tell you something. What I'm sure you've heard, and I've heard many times, as a response to that is, don't judge Judaism by the people.
Right.
And I say, no, that's wrong.
Yeah. You
do judge Judaism by the people. If enough people are not behaving in an elevated manner, something's wrong. And I understand someone on the outside looking in and seeing this picture and thinking or assuming that, one second, this lifestyle is supposed to produce something like this. Not that anyone is perfect. You have to allow for people to succumb to their passions and their impulses every once in a while, and maybe not say things as constructively or as they would like to. But you should absolutely expect that there should be a sense of elevated behavior from someone who is observing a lifestyle that promises that.
Yeah. Okay, we're running close on time. I want to be respectful of the amount of time you have. I have two quick questions for you now.
Yeah, by the way, I'm fine. You decide how long you want to go.
Okay. What are you most excited about in the future? Like going forward with your own what you're doing and what you're building and where you see things going, like what really inspires you about the next, say, 10 years of your life?
Oh, of my life.
Yeah. What do you have that gift, that moment. So what is your future going to look like? What's your next step?
Well, it's yet to be determined. I have certain ideas of certain opportunities that are sort of like bubbling right now, but I don't know what's going to come of them. My wife has been on me to write a book for the longest time.
I second it.
I understand, but I think we've had this conversation before. I'm more of a live action person as opposed to on the page, and I would prefer to give classes and speak and travel and communicate that way. Although that might be in the cards down the road. I have some other ideas that I'm thinking about that all are, I think, are designed to target particular groups that I feel need special attention.
Okay, so I'm going to ask. That was not part of the question, but that's question number 1B. What groups do you feel that you that need particular attention?
Well, I'll tell you a couple of things.
Yeah.
One thing that one program or type of experience that I believe could make a big difference, and I've been approached to create are learners' minions. And a learner's minion is not a beginner's minion. I want to make sure that people don't make that assumption. Oh, that it's a beginner's minion. You really don't have a knowledge level. The people who've approached me are people who are quite knowledgeable. But a learner's minion is that tefillah, prayer is a huge issue for a lot of people. It's hard to maintain focus. A lot of times I don't understand the words. Even if I understand the words, I'm not feeling it, and so on and so forth. So I've been doing learners' meetings for high holiday services for many, many years. And I just recently did one here for someone's bar mitzvah. We just created a service and throughout at certain intervals in the davening.
Where you would get up and speak a little bit about what's going on.
And speak, and I would engage the audience, and I would probably it would have to be in an appropriate time in the davening that would allow for it. Right. But I do allow myself some latitude. Yeah, and it's a very dynamic experience. So that's something that I'm thinking about. I'm also teaching a group of millennials. I'm not even sure what age group that covers. I
got the definition. It was it was a suffix a little bit. It was between 32 and 35.
Really? It's not in the 20s at all?
No, I'm saying up to. That's the
up to. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Starting when? Starting 20?
I don't think 20 is kind of young. I would say like 25. Yeah, I'd say like 25 to 35. Let's do that one.
So there's a group of millennials that I've sort of like fallen into because I know one of them, someone who's in a real up and coming person in the record industry, and he hosts this Torah class. His roommate is the actor that I had mentioned earlier before, and they have a whole sphere of friends. Many of them who have done Birthright and came back, and now what? Which is a whole separate thing.
Are you finding that style, that demographic is particularly different than your average audience? There's a lot of talk about how millennials are different, or at the core, kind of everyone's the same person.
You know what? I have to tell you, I don't think so. I mean, I've taught a couple. My feeling is there are universal themes. You have to pick the right stories and the right analogies and whatever, but there are universal themes. Yes, a person in his 50s and 60s and about to teach a class to a group of midlifers. Yeah. Right. So they're feeling mortality differently than a millennial is. So they're going to be very, very, very present and plugged into certain themes, maybe pertaining to, the urgency of having to do something with your life because I have no idea how much time left I have. More maybe than millennials, but by and large, I think that themes really, they're just core themes of wanting to feel a sense of purpose in your life, wanting to have skills to negotiate your lives, and so on and so forth.
There you have it, folks, another inspiring episode. If you enjoyed this, I ask you to please share this with your friends and to like us over on Rabbi Rupp through Facebook or on YouTube. And the more that we're able to get these important messages out, the more that we can really make an impact in the world. So I encourage you, please, to stay tuned. We have a ton of amazing speakers coming up, and also to tell your friends about it. Thank you very much.